Welcome to another in our series of Vision Quest Journeys, stories from the People's Residence, being filmed tonight at the A Different Booklist Cultural Center, the home of the People's Residence at 777 Bathurst Street in Toronto. And a few weeks back, I got the opportunity to sit with the founder and director of the People's Residence, and we had an enjoyable conversation setting some context of what our dreams were for this series. So welcome back, Ita Sadhu.
Thank you, Don Simpson. It's great to be here at the Vision Quest Journey.
Hey, we have prepared actually a 1-hour conversation that sets the context for what our dream is of this series. And I'm bringing to this series my more than 60 years of wandering around the world in various capacities as educator, administrator, entrepreneur, program designer, and now trying to concentrate on being a mentor and a storyteller. And my partner on this journey is a storyteller par excellence. So Ita, tell our audience tonight just a little introduction to who you are as a storyteller in the People's Residence, which will entice them to go back and view our 60-minute context-setting conversation.
Well, the cool thing, thank you, Don, for that. The cool thing about being a storyteller in the People's Residence is that you're never, ever short of stories. I mean, every time that the door opens, it's another chapter, it's another story. And one of the stories that come to mind that tickles my imagination is about this woman who came recently, and she said that she was the only woman in a team of males who designed the 767 aircraft. I mean, immediately, like once upon a time, there were women and they did great things, and then suddenly they got written out of history and they women weren't doing great things, and suddenly this woman pops up and she says, I am one of the members of the design team for the 767. When that woman said that, there was another younger woman who was serving beverages across the way, and she heard 767. And she turned to her and she said, you know what? My husband, he flies a 767. He's probably flying a 767 right now. Because we live in a time of instant information, I know people who were within earshot began to think, is that the plane that they're not supposed to fly? Is it a good time? We were so aviation literate in that moment. So suddenly these two women now begin to have a conversation about 767. I'm a storyteller. I'm watching that human engagement, and I get excited about that. I must have told 500 people that story about two people just meeting randomly and sharing history. I've told that story so many times now that I can't even remember the first version of the story I've been telling. Sometimes I think I told people that I designed a 767. I mean, like, that's how cool storytelling is. But my point is this: no two people in the world see the world the same way, and you will only tell the same story the same way only once in your lifetime. That's why we have lawyers. I just want to be clear about that. So being a storyteller in the People's Residence, because you are engaged with people every day, there is no shortage of stories. Sometimes you can even see stories in people's toes. Sometimes you can see a story in the back of a woman wearing stockings, and the stockings are maybe tarnished, and you begin to see poverty or sign of poverty or some sort of aspect of humanity that if you just looked at that person, you wouldn't see it. But suddenly a small detail in a human being, a story just begins. So that's an incredible, I'm honored to be in the People's Residence watching stories evolve every day.
And that's part of my joy, getting a chance as a explorer who's been wandering around the world, now back in Toronto, and getting a chance to spend time in this People's Residence. Because those two women, that story you're telling, I'm assuming they met at an event of the People's Residence.
They were at a book launch, and
Okay.
the book launch was about migration. The book launch was by a book by Rita Deverell. And Rita Deverell is an incredible storyteller. As a matter of fact, there was a period of time where she was one of the few faces of color on television. She was on Vision TV. And I have a friend called Pearl, and Pearl always says, you know, if black people are on TV, we need to watch it because there's not enough of it. Even if it's boring, we got to watch it because it's just black people. Right? So back then, not to say Rita Deverell was boring, I was going to say that, but we watched Rita Deverell because she looked like us and she represented us. So it was at her book launch that this thing, and that book is about the migration of people who came from Americans who came to Canada either through the Underground Railroad or of draft dodgers, whatever the period of time that Americans came from the US here. And so at a book launch, at a story, as a documentation of people's stories, this story took place.
Yeah. So you get a sense, those of you out there in the digital world, of what kind of center this is, because there are book launches, there are events of practical experiences for people in the neighborhood, there are presentations by visiting dignitaries, there are musical performances, but to me, the essence of the People's Residence is it's a warm, welcoming education center, cultural center, but it's a neighborhood gathering center.
It is, and you know what, all the time you're talking, I'm thinking to the resilience of stories and what you see too. The other day, for example, we had this man, a very tiny man. His son comes to the place all the time to buy books. So in comes this man, and he's a little Japanese man, and he's about this big. And I think he's sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in now. And I say to him, so how are you, and what brought you to the city? Are you visiting? You know, all those regular things. And he says, yes. He says, I'm visiting from Vancouver. And then he said, you know that big crane out there? And we look at this huge crane that's outside the window. He says, I used to run a crane like that. And in that moment, that man takes us through the makeup of the crane, how tall, the engineering of the crane. And he says this, and then I fell off that crane. And I split this, and I mashed up this, and this thing, and this bone was shattered, and people thought I was going to die, but I came back. Oh my gosh, he had us engaged. And then he looked through the other window at the other crane, and he broke down that whole crane, all the steps. He talked about all the eye-hand coordination, the person that you have to trust on the ground who's talking to you on a walkie-talkie, because we are saying things to him like, so is there like a computer? Then you look at the computer and you navigate the train. He goes, no, it's all on the phone. You got to trust this person on this radio on the ground, and people can die, and on and on. When I'm listening to this man who has seen death and back, and he's this big, I gotta say who this big. In Jamaica, they would say he's a Talawa man. He's little but mighty, huh? And I'm thinking, but that's the power too of story, right? Stories tell us about small overcoming big, and weak overcoming powerful. And here, once again, we have in real time this man who has come to tell us. Now, for some reason, too, this is the other thing about stories and about energy. You and I know that we look through the window of the People's Residence and we see Ellis Don. Now, Ellis Don I see everywhere, and I've seen Ellis Don in different parts of the world. You've told me the history of Ellis Don, and here comes this man from another part of the country, and he tells the story of Ellis Don. Everywhere now I go, people seem to just come up to me and tell me the story of Ellis Don. Again, connection of story and energy.
Yes, because you know that my hometown as a young married husband and father was in London, Ontario, which was the home of Don Smith, the co-founder of Ellis Don. So that's how I know about the construction company. When you talk about your Caribbean sayings about tall being strong, I go back to my Scottish roots when my grandmother would say, "Gid gir gang in wee book." Good things come in small packages. And so one of the wonders of this place is that everyone is welcome. And Ida, you have an incredible capacity for making everybody feel welcome. And I take my hat off to your team, because your wonderful supportive team have captured that culture. So if you want to visit 777 Bathurst Street, don't worry about having a purpose in mind. Just come in and feel welcome. But when we were setting the context, the last 20 minutes of our story a couple of weeks ago was about one of the events that you and this place helped be a catalyst to get going. But it wasn't something that happened in the people's residence. It happened out in the neighborhood. And it was called A Walk with Excellence. And you gave a good description of the purpose behind the walk. And now we're sitting tonight, the walk took place. The 7th annual walk took place yesterday. And you and I had a great experience of participating with a walk that was focused on helping people dream big and reach out and implement their dream. So when we were talking about the criteria we wanted to establish for this series, we said we wanted a series that would describe initiatives in which people had the creative energy to dream, and then had the courage to try to live their dream, and then took the time to build the skills necessary to implement the dream. And to me, that's what I saw yesterday, a whole day's program built around dreaming, courage, seizing opportunities, and learning how to implement the dream. So can you share with me, because it was a busy day, I have my own impressions of the day, but this is the 7th day of this walk. There were 500 students there from 5 different high schools. Walk us through the day as you saw it yesterday.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind right now, and I'm going back to a little bit what we just shared about builders. I come out of a building tradition in a construction home. Fitz Willoughby Walcott, my grandfather, built incredible buildings in Barbados. So hence, I think that's also my fascination with construction. But the other thing that he did is, when I was a child, we would go to a particular property and he would open up his hands and he would landscape. He would draw the entire village, the entire development, whatever he was going to build, he would draw it in his hands. And he would say to me, little kid, this is where this is going to go. This is where the bird sanctuary, that's the pool, that's the landscaping. And he would do it in his hands. And then months later, we would come back and exactly what he showed me in his hands was exactly what I saw. And so with A Walk with Excellence, it is crossing over, as I said, the intersection of Jane and Finch, and seeing in my mind's eye the desire and the beliefs of Charles Roach and Dudley Laws. Always to have a public demonstration of how great we are, how resistant we are, how resilient we are. And so with the 7th walk yesterday, I was excited because once again, like my grandfather's hands, I could see this thing that myself, Shannon Ashman, my incredible assistant at the time, and young people in the leadership of the schools came together as a committee to plan this thing called the Walk of Excellence. I love fun. I like a parade. I love the carnival. I also say to people, if I was born in Trinidad, I probably would have died a long time because that carnival would have driven me crazy. But yesterday for me started in a beautiful way. It started in the morning where my phone blew up about 6 o'clock and the text said, bad news, Raptors lost. Good news, we are on Metro Morning. Booyah! Right?
Yeah.
And here again now, the whole city was excited and on edge. Waiting for the Raptors to win against the Golden State Warriors. And here today, we are going to be engaged in an activity that speaks to wellness and health and walking. That was an exciting thing at 6 o'clock to know that we had landed mainstream media to do an activity that was in the same sector as sports. That was the first thing. And then to get to the school early in the morning and see all the volunteers and people come in. And I want to say this, for the last 7 years, we've had all these elders, people who are now in their 80s. Yesterday, I was a little saddened because I saw too that we have lost elders over the last 5-6 years. Dulcie, Dick Lotion, oh my gosh, don't beat me up in heaven, Dick Lotion. I know you weren't an elder, but you left quickly. But a number of people who walked with these young people, and these people were former marshals of the Caravana Parade. So they came to the walk bringing that knowledge of marshaling people in a parade, and they were excited to be walking with young people to share their experiences. So it was a beautiful thing to see that those people, Dr. Rita Cox, oh my gosh, she's been coming for seven years. Oh my God, I'm gonna let the secret out. Yes, I think that she's about 80. But anyway, not to digress, but that was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing to see an administration getting excited. At the same time, the school is under serious manners because it was a day for the EQA testing. And that's a serious thing in school. That's a whole serious thing in community. People lose their minds. And one by one, to see everyone get into place and in routine. And then the students began to arrive. And students from C.W. Jeffries, welcoming students from Westview and from Downsview and from Emory. Students that people say, these kids don't get along, but they're being given this red carpet welcome. Oh, that was really cool. The sweetest part of the story, too, at the top of the morning was this, that Earl Lapeer Jr., the panist, and he's on the pans and he's creating that energy. He leads a band called Afropan. It's the mother band of all steel bands in this country called Canada, almost 45 years strong. And that band came out of Westview School. That's where the history of the steel band in this city comes out. So to set the tone, we come in with game, we come in with an institution that still exists. We started already with excellence. And throughout the morning, the keynote speaker, one of the things that I noted about the kids were pumped. And here now comes this keynote speaker. And oftentimes young people, when they see keynote speakers, oh my God, what are they going to say? Stay in school, be educated, what you going to do, you know, be motivated, blah, blah, blah. But what I noted about him, the minute that they heard his accent and they heard Jamaica, there was a hush for about 30 seconds. But suddenly, here was this man who flew planes, who was a pilot, who was a specialist of helicopters. But not only that, he was with the air ambulance program. So he was involved in safety and saving lives. And out of his mouth came a Caribbean accent. And for a moment there, all those 500 kids were like, say what? Yeah. He wasn't a doctor and he wasn't a lawyer. That in itself in the moment for me was exciting.
Well, and it's interesting that you hone in on that because two things for me coming to my first was to arrive at the school and not sure how do you find your way, and to walk a gauntlet of teachers and parents cheering the students and their guests into the meeting room, into the auditorium, and to walk into a hive of energy. The students are all wearing these t-shirts where they've had somebody design a logo.
Yep, Matt Chapman. Oh, he's an incredible artist.
And immediately I get given my, like, we're all together in this.
Yes.
And they're moving. Some of them are in their seats, but it's the pre-event, but people are moving and dancing. And I'm looking at this on the back and saying, what is this? And they have a poet.
There's a poet. And here again, this is an exciting moment. I mean, you talk to students, you say, do you know who the poet laureate of the city of Toronto is? Like, what? What? Like, who is that? What? But now we go to the city of Toronto and we say to them, can we have the poet laureate for the city of Toronto write a poem for the students for this day? And the poet laureate thinks, okay, this is kind of cool, but you know, do I have time? And then you say to them, but you've got 500 walking billboards forever. And they think, oh my God, I don't think I've ever sold 500 poetry books.
That's right.
In one shot. But to know that young people are carrying your message. So Albert Mortiz, our new poet laureate for the city of Toronto 2019, and he came with game. What I appreciated about him is he did not sit. The whole time he stood as we were getting started, and he took in all of the energy in the room.
But then he got up on the stage
That's right.
and got us into a call and response
Yes.
of the poem.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we should share with our
Oh,
audience.
snap. Well, shoot. And I love the creative way we can do it, because the objective of reading the poem is, so you got to show me your poem and I show you mine, and we read it off of each other's bodies. How cool is that?
That's right. So here we go.
Right.
And I'll be the poet saying it first and you follow. Excellence, be great, do well.
Okay, excellence, be great, do well.
And bring it to everyone.
And bring it to everyone.
We will excel.
We will excel.
And help everyone excel.
And help everyone excel.
Excellence, let each person be supreme.
Excellence, let each person be supreme.
This is our dream.
This is our dream.
But is it only a dream?
But is it only a dream?
No, only this makes sense.
No, only this makes sense.
And we'll make it be true.
And we will make it true.
We will help to give it to us and them, to me and you.
We will help to give it to us and them, to me and you.
We will live it.
We will live it.
We will talk and walk our excellence.
We will talk and walk our excellence.
And we will march and sing.
And we will march and sing.
The excellence of everyone.
The excellence of everyone.
That's the most real thing. Everyone's greatness and success.
That's the most real thing. Everyone's greatness and success.
It's not here yet.
It's not here yet.
Well, you can bet.
Well, you can bet.
It's a world that we will get.
It's a world that we will get.
It's the justice that is coming.
Well, like that. It's the justice that is coming.
The only world that makes sense.
The only world that makes sense.
It's the gift we will sing and bring.
It's the gift we will sing and bring.
As we walk with excellence.
As we walk with excellence. You got to do that. You just can't like end like that. You got to like booyah, right?
And then we headed out from the school, 500 strong.
Yep.
With police playing a very supportive role, but it wasn't a controlling role.
No, it was minor key.
It was controlling the traffic so that we had the free route.
Yes.
To walk the streets with the truckers blowing their horns and the young students at the schools we went by out cheering. Yes. And then to be welcomed at York University with the different faculties handing out food and gifts and welcoming them, and the vice president being there to welcome these 500 students and say, this is your university.
What was beautiful too for me is that intersection of Finch and Kiel is changing. And so we walk past newness, we walk past green, we walk past the smell of, was it lilacs?
Yes,
we walk past all of that. We walk past art, installations. We walk past people, even the little kids, they said to Denise Herrera Jackson, congratulations on what you've achieved. You know, like Denise Herrera Jackson, you know, and she was tickled pink, one of our volunteers. We walked past all of that. And the people who honked their cars, their horns, and those who didn't regretted it. I know right now they're thinking to themselves, oh my God, I missed such a moment of history. That for me was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing too to see parents, people who came in and out of the new subway stations and thinking like, what is this going by? And you're not sure, it's a crowd, oh my God, they're gonna run me over, or is this dangerous, is this scary? There was one man who rolled down his window and said, what are you protesting? And he goes, no, we're not protesting, we are celebrating. He goes, all right then. Okay. Excellent.
And remember, with all of the words, it was the models they saw around them.
Yeah.
The pilot, and we'll close with this story. The pilot from Jamaica, who said that during a hurricane storm, the rescuers came and a helicopter landed and out walked a black man flying the helicopter, and as a young child, he began to think for the first time, this could be me. And so he was there passing on his model. This hopefully gives you a sense of the range of things that come out of the People's Residence. And I'd like to close with speaking again of two great spirits that are driving our work and our series, the spirit of festivity and the spirit of fantasy. The spirit of festivity where periodically you put aside the problems of the moment, join with your friends like we did yesterday, and joyously celebrate success. And fantasy, the ability to dream of new lifestyles for the future. And that the walk of excellence was just imbued with both those spirits. Thank you for being the driver behind it. Thank you for giving me the gift of experiencing it. And thank you, people out there, for listening to another in our series of Vision Quest Journeys, Stories from the People's Residence.